A young homeless woman surprises and wins the heart of a millionaire. Before we start the story, share in the comments. Where are you watching from? Enjoy the story. Logan Collins walked into the coffee shop, his heart racing. In his hand, he held a small velvet box containing the most expensive ring he had ever purchased. He was certain this night would change his life. The table was reserved, the setting perfect, discreet and cozy, just the way Vanessa, his girlfriend, liked it. Everything had to be flawless. Vanessa arrived a few minutes later, her smile radiant. She looked impeccable, as always. Logan stood up, kissed her hand, and they sat down. Their conversation was light, but he could barely focus. Finally, he took a deep breath, pulled the box from his pocket, and opened it, revealing the ring. "Vanessa, will you marry me?" Her smile vanished instantly. The silence that followed felt like time had frozen. Vanessa looked at Logan and shook her head. "Logan, I can't do this," she said firmly. "You're an amazing man, but you're never really here. You're always working, always busy. I don't want to marry someone who's far away, even when they're close." She stood up, grabbed her purse, and left, leaving Logan alone at the table. He sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The rejection echoed in his mind, mixed with humiliation. Without saying a word, he paid the bill and stepped outside. The rain had started to fall, thin and cold. Logan wandered aimlessly, clutching the small box in his hand. He felt empty, as though everything he thought he had built was crumbling. That's when he saw a young woman sitting on a street corner. She had messy hair and worn-out clothes, holding a piece of cardboard that read, "Hungry, please help." Logan paused for a moment, watching her. She looked so young, so out of place in the dark, wet streets. Driven by a mix of frustration and impulse, he took the box out of his pocket and walked up to her. "Here, take this," he said, handing her the ring. Before she could respond, he turned and began to walk away. Ruby, the young homeless woman, looked at the ring in her hands. It was the most brilliant and valuable thing she had ever seen. But something didn't feel right. Why would a stranger give something so expensive to someone like her? Without thinking, she stood up and ran after him. "Hey, wait," Ruby called out, catching up to Logan. "You can't just give me this." Logan stopped, confused, and turned to face her. "Why not? You can sell it and get enough money to get off the streets." "I can't take this," Ruby said, holding the ring back out to him. "It's not mine. I didn't earn it. It's not right." Logan narrowed his eyes, surprised by her resolve. He had expected her to simply accept it and move on. But here she was, refusing a gift that could solve her immediate problems. "Why are you giving it back? This could change your life." "Maybe," Ruby replied firmly. "But I don't need something like this. I don't want people looking at me and thinking I stole it. I can't carry something that isn't mine." Logan stood silent, studying the young woman before him. She had a weary but determined look, and her honesty disarmed him. He sighed, shaking his head. "Fine, you win, but at least let me buy you lunch. You're hungry, aren't you?" Ruby hesitated. She didn't trust strangers, especially well-dressed, wealthy men who appeared out of nowhere. But her empty stomach protested, and the offer seemed sincere. "All right, but just because I'm hungry," she said, crossing her arms. Logan motioned to a small nearby diner, and the two went inside. As they sat, Ruby kept a wary eye on him, trying to figure out his sudden kindness. Logan, on the other hand, couldn't stop looking at her, intrigued by the strength she carried despite having clearly lost so much. The chapter ends with Logan asking his first question. How did someone so young end up here? Ruby hesitated before answering. Logan expected something simple, but he quickly realized that any answer she gave would carry a depth he wasn't prepared for. After a few moments of silence, she took a deep breath, staring at the bowl of warm soup he had ordered for her. "It didn't happen overnight," she finally said. "I grew up in a troubled home. My dad drank, my mom worked all the time trying to keep things afloat, but it was never enough. When I was 15, my dad left us." Logan crossed his arms, listening carefully. He didn't interrupt, which surprised Ruby. Usually, people didn't bother to hear her out. "My mom tried to keep things together, but she got sick. I dropped out of school to take care of her. We managed to get by somehow until she passed." Ruby's voice faltered for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "After that, the bills piled up, and before I knew it, I was out on the streets." Logan frowned, trying to process what she had said. He couldn't imagine someone so young going through so much. At the same time, he felt a pang of guilt. He had everything and still found reasons to complain about life. "And you never tried asking for help?" he asked, not realizing how naive the question sounded. Ruby let out a dry laugh and shook her head. "Do you think it's easy? Do you think people care? Most just look the other way. When they do help, it's usually because they want to look good in front of others, but they rarely do anything that actually matters." Logan stayed silent, feeling the weight of her words. Ruby continued, "Maybe that's why I was so surprised when you showed up with that ring. It didn't feel real. People like you don't help people like me without expecting something in return." "And you think I wanted something?" Logan asked, curious. "I don't know, maybe, but I don't think that's the case," Ruby shrugged. And that just made it more confusing. Logan sighed, leaning his elbows on the table. He looked at the young woman in front of him and noticed that her gaze was different, like she could see through the layers he usually showed the world. "To be honest, I don't know why I did it either," he admitted, glancing out the window. "Maybe it was just the weight of the moment. My girlfriend just turned down my marriage proposal." Ruby raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You were going to get married?" "I thought I was. At least, I thought so." He let out a humorless laugh. "But she said no, said I'm absent, that I'm not really present." Ruby gave a small smile, which Logan found unexpected. "Well, she's not entirely wrong, is she?" Logan looked up at her, surprised by her bluntness. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean, you seem like a man who has everything, but at the same time, you have nothing." Ruby met his eyes. "I'm not saying this to insult you. It's just, you're here, but it feels like your mind is somewhere else." Logan didn't reply. He was used to being praised, admired, even envied, but no one had ever spoken to him like that. Ruby's brutal honesty disarmed him in a way he couldn't explain. "Maybe you're right," he admitted finally. Ruby took a few more spoonfuls of soup, savoring each bite as if it were a luxurious meal. Logan watched her with curiosity. "And now, what are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe go home and keep pretending everything's fine. That's what I do best." Ruby smiled faintly, but said nothing. Logan shifted the focus of the conversation. "And you? What do you plan to do next?" Ruby shrugged. "Survive. Isn't that enough?" Logan frowned. Her answer bothered him more than he expected. It was as if she had resigned herself to the idea that survival was the best she could hope for, and that unsettled him. "Surviving shouldn't be enough for anyone," he said, crossing his arms. "You deserve more than that." Ruby looked at him with a mix of surprise and disbelief. "And what do you know about deserving?" she asked, her voice low but firm. "People like you have everything handed to them. People like me have to fight for every scrap." Logan opened his mouth to respond but stopped. She was right. He knew nothing about that kind of struggle. Still, he felt he couldn't just walk away and leave her there as if nothing had happened. "Maybe I don't know," he admitted, "but that doesn't mean you should settle for less than you deserve." Ruby sighed and finished her soup. Logan stood up to pay the bill, and when he returned, he looked at her as if making a decision. "Listen, I don't know what made me approach you today, but I think we can do something different." "Different how?" Ruby asked, skeptical. "I can offer you a job. It's not much, but it's something. Work at my house for a while, until you can get back on your feet." Ruby's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious?" "I am." Ruby hesitated, considering what accepting such an offer would mean. But when she looked at Logan, she sensed something genuine in his proposal. "Okay, but on one condition." "What condition?" "I don't want charity. If it's not real work, I'd rather stay where I am." Logan smiled slightly, impressed by her determination. "Fair enough. So, do we have a deal?" Ruby took a deep breath before answering. "We do." Logan extended his hand for a handshake, and Ruby accepted it. As Ruby walked alongside Logan, her heart felt heavy. The contrast between the two of them was striking. He, dressed in a sharp suit, walking with confidence. She, in worn clothes, her body slightly hunched as if carrying the weight of a lifetime of struggles. Yet there was something about his invitation that felt genuine. Maybe it was the absence of judgment in his eyes, or the way he seemed more lost than she had imagined. When they arrived at the entrance of a luxurious building, Ruby stopped abruptly. "Wait." "Is this where you live?" she asked, looking at the imposing glass and marble facade. Logan turned, frowning. "Yes." "Why?" Ruby crossed her arms, hesitant. "I don't know if I belong here." Logan sighed, holding the door open for her. "Don't worry about that right now. Let's go inside." Reluctantly, Ruby followed Logan through the lobby, trying to ignore the curious glances from the staff and residents. The elevator, with its gold finish and mirrors, looked like something out of a movie. When the doors opened to the top floor, Ruby held her breath at the sight of the apartment. The living room was spacious, with large windows offering a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was modern and elegant, and everything seemed impeccably arranged, as if no one truly lived there. "This is your home?" Ruby asked, still taking it all in. "It is. But, to be honest, I don't spend much time here." Logan ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable with his own luxury. "Come on, I'll show you where you can stay." Logan led Ruby to a small but cozy room at the back of the apartment. While it didn't have the same glamour as the rest of the place, it was more comfortable than anything Ruby had experienced in years. "Here it is, you can settle in. Tomorrow, we'll figure out how you can help." Ruby nodded silently. After Logan left, she closed the door and sat on the bed, feeling the softness of the mattress. For the first time in years, she had a roof over her head and a real bed to sleep in. Still, anxiety lingered. Why was Logan doing this? What did he really expect from her? The next morning, Ruby woke up early, determined to prove she wasn't a burden. When she left the room, she found Logan in the kitchen, dressed casually, a stark contrast to the man she'd met the day before. "Good morning," he said, holding a cup of coffee. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I expected," Ruby replied. "What do you want me to do?" Logan smiled faintly, appreciating her proactive attitude. "To start, I need help organizing some documents. My secretary's out, and I've fallen behind on a few things." Ruby followed him to an office in the apartment, where a stack of papers covered a large wooden desk. Logan quickly explained what she needed to do, and to his surprise, Ruby caught on easily. While she worked, Logan occasionally glanced at her. There was something about her that intrigued him. The way she focused on her task as if every detail mattered, even though he knew it was just basic work. "You're good at this," he remarked, breaking the silence. Ruby looked up, surprised by the compliment. "I had to learn fast. When you live on the streets, you have to be creative." Logan nodded, sensing there was much more to her story than she was willing to share at that moment. The day passed quickly, and Ruby proved to be more efficient than Logan had anticipated. By the afternoon, he found her in the kitchen, improvising something to eat. "What are you making?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Some pasta. Hope you don't mind," she said, stirring a pot. Logan chuckled, shaking his head. "As long as there's enough for two, it's fine." They ate together, and for the first time, the tension between them seemed to ease. Logan appeared more relaxed, as though he was rediscovering a part of himself he'd long forgotten. After dinner, Logan grabbed a bottle of wine and poured himself a glass. He offered one to Ruby, but she declined, saying she preferred water. "So what do you plan to do now that you have a place to stay?" he asked, curious. Ruby shrugged. "I'm not sure yet. Just getting off the streets is a big step. I think I'll focus on that for now." Logan nodded, but something about her words unsettled him. He didn't want Ruby to just survive. He wanted her to thrive. But how could he help her achieve that without coming across as overbearing? Later that evening, after Ruby had gone to her room, Logan sat alone in the living room, deep in thought. Her presence was already changing something inside him. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something meaningful. Ruby, on the other hand, was restless. Despite the comfort of the room and Logan's generosity, she couldn't stop thinking about what might come next. What did he expect from her? And why did she feel like there was more kindness in him than he seemed to believe? The next morning, as Ruby cleaned the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Logan went to answer it, and Ruby heard voices at the door. One of them was a woman's voice, sharp and familiar. When Ruby stepped closer, she saw Vanessa, Logan's ex-girlfriend, standing in the doorway with a smug smile on her face. "So it's true," Vanessa said, looking Ruby up and down. "You actually brought a homeless woman into your house." Ruby felt her blood boil, but before she could respond, Logan closed the door behind Vanessa, cutting her off from Ruby's view. "What you want, Vanessa?" Logan asked, visibly irritated. Ruby returned to the kitchen but stayed close enough to hear. As much as she didn't want to admit it, something about the conversation intrigued her. Why was Vanessa here? And why did Logan seem so upset? As the voices grew muffled, Ruby couldn't shake the feeling that, even though she had found a place to stay, her presence in Logan's life was about to bring complications she couldn't foresee. She pretended to stay busy in the kitchen, but curiosity got the better of her. Vanessa's haughty tone and condescending demeanor made it clear she didn't have good intentions. Ruby strained to catch pieces of the conversation as Logan's frustration became more evident. "What are you doing, Logan?" Vanessa's voice dripped with disdain. "Have you completely lost your mind? A homeless woman living here? What will people think?" "I don't care what people think, Vanessa," Logan replied curtly. "Ruby works for me now. She's here because she needs help and because she deserves a chance." Vanessa let out a mocking laugh. "Works for you? How long are you going to play the hero before you get bored? You and I both know she doesn't belong in your world." Ruby's heart raced. Even though she didn't know Vanessa, her words hit like a punch to the gut. No matter how much she tried to ignore others' opinions, it was hard not to feel the truth in what Vanessa was saying. She didn't belong in Logan's world. But Logan wasn't backing down. "You don't understand, Vanessa, because you've never had to fight for anything. Ruby has more courage than anyone I know, including you. Now, if you're done making your scene, you can leave." Vanessa tried to argue, but Logan opened the door and motioned firmly for her to go. With an angry glare, she stormed out, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. When the door shut, silence filled the space. Ruby, still in the kitchen, tried to look busy, but Logan walked in, his expression serious. "Sorry about that. Vanessa is complicated," he said with a sigh. "Complicated is putting it lightly," Ruby replied without looking directly at him. Logan let out a short laugh but quickly grew serious again. "She shouldn't have spoken to you like that." Ruby finally looked up to meet his gaze. "She's right, I don't belong here." "That's not true." Logan's voice was firm. "No one has the right to decide where you belong." Ruby stayed silent, surprised by the conviction in his voice. He seemed to genuinely believe what he was saying, but she wasn't sure how to process it. "I'll try not to cause any problems," Ruby said quietly. "You're not causing problems." Logan slipped a hand into his pocket and shifted the conversation. "What do you say we take a break? I need to get out for a bit, and I think you could use it too." Ruby gave him a wary look. "Get out? Where to?" "You'll see." Though hesitant, Ruby eventually agreed. Something in Logan's demeanor seemed genuine, as if he really wanted to do something good for her. He led her to the elevator, and a few minutes later they were walking through the streets of the city. Logan stopped at a modest clothing store with good quality items and led her inside. "Pick out some clothes," he said casually. "No, I can't accept this," Ruby replied, crossing her arms. "It's not a gift. Consider it part of the job. You'll need better clothes to handle whatever comes next." Ruby hesitated but knew he was right. She picked out a few basic items, avoiding the more expensive ones. While trying on clothes in the fitting room, she overheard Logan talking with the store clerk. He seemed comfortable anywhere, as if the whole world was his stage. After they left the store, Logan took her to a small cafe. They sat outside, where the sounds of the city filled the quiet moments. "Why do you do this?" Ruby asked, finally breaking the silence. "Do what?" "Help me. You don't have to." Logan looked at her for a moment before answering. "Maybe because I need to." Ruby frowned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Logan gazed at the horizon, thoughtful. "I spent years building a life based on what I thought success was, money, power, status. But deep down, none of that means much. Helping you, it makes me feel like I'm doing something real for the first time." Ruby didn't know how to respond. On one hand, it was comforting to hear that. On the other, it seemed to carry an unexpected weight. After they finished their coffee, Logan took her back to the apartment. Once there, he went straight to his office, while Ruby stayed in the living room, reflecting on everything that had happened that day. As she sorted through her thoughts, Ruby realized there was something vulnerable about Logan. He was a powerful man, yet he seemed burdened by regrets. It made her feel a little less out of place, as if, in some way, they were connected by their own internal struggles. That night, Ruby went to the kitchen and found Logan sitting at the table with a glass of whiskey in hand. He seemed lost in thought, but looked up when she entered. "I can't sleep," she admitted, sitting in the chair across from him. "Welcome to the club," Logan replied, raising his glass. For a moment, the silence between them was comfortable. Neither knew exactly what to say, but it didn't seem to matter. They were starting to understand that perhaps they had more in common than they realized. Ruby felt, for the first time in a long while, that someone was willing to listen to her. And for Logan, she was the first person in years who seemed to see beyond the perfect facade he always presented to the world. The next morning, Ruby woke up to the sound of movement in the apartment. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and still groggy, she followed it to the kitchen. Logan was there, dressed once again in his impeccable suit, adjusting his tie as he sipped his coffee. "Good morning," he said without looking at her. "Did you sleep well?" Ruby shrugged, grabbing a mug. "Better than on the streets, for sure." Logan smirked slightly. "I've got a busy day, but I had a few things delivered here. Feel free to organize what you need." Ruby nodded, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling of living in a world that wasn't hers. After Logan left, the apartment fell silent again, but the peace didn't last long. Soon, the doorbell rang. Ruby opened the door to find an elegant woman wearing an unmistakable air of superiority. Vanessa was back, unannounced this time. "So you're the famous Ruby?" Vanessa said, looking her up and down. Ruby didn't answer immediately. "Logan's not here." "I know that. I didn't come to see him. I came to see you." Ruby narrowed her eyes, crossing her arms. "What do you want?" Vanessa stepped inside, ignoring Ruby's resistance. "I want to know what exactly you're doing here. Logan isn't the type to just take people in. He barely has time for his own friends, let alone someone like you." Ruby felt her blood boil but took a deep breath. "I work here. That's it." Vanessa let out a short laugh. "Work? How convenient. He brought you here to ease his conscience, didn't he? I bet he's already planning the next way to get rid of you." Ruby stood her ground, but inside, her insecurities began to scream. What Vanessa said echoed doubts she already had. Why was Logan really helping, and how long would it last? "I think you should leave," Ruby said, keeping her voice steady. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her boldness. "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. When Logan gets tired of playing hero, you'll realize you never had a place here." Without waiting for a response, Vanessa turned and left, leaving Ruby alone in the doorway. Later, when Logan returned, he found Ruby sitting silently on the couch with her arms crossed. He immediately noticed something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, setting down the briefcase he was carrying. "Your ex was here," Ruby said bluntly. Logan frowned. "Vanessa, what did she want?" "She said I don't belong here, that you only brought me here to ease your conscience." Logan took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "She doesn't know what she's talking about. Don't listen to Vanessa." "But she's right, isn't she?" Ruby shot back. "I don't belong in this world." Logan moved closer, sitting down in the chair across from her. "Ruby, listen. What Vanessa thinks doesn't matter. What matters is what you do with the opportunities you get. You deserve to be here just as much as anyone else." "And what about you?" she asked. "Why did you really bring me here?" Logan hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he'd never had to put it into words before. "Because I needed to change something in my life," he said honestly. "Meeting you made me realize how stuck I was in my own bubble. You reminded me there are things more important than work or status." Ruby didn't know what to say. There was an intensity in Logan's voice that caught her off guard, as if, for the first time, someone truly believed she was worth something. The next day, Logan decided to take Ruby to a business social event. He knew it was a risk, but wanted to show her she could face anything, even in an environment that didn't seem to suit her at first glance. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Ruby asked, looking at the dress Logan had bought for her. "Absolutely. Besides, it's time some people learned to respect you." When they arrived at the event, the stares were immediate. Logan walked in with Ruby by his side, both impeccably dressed, and the murmurs around the room began at once. Some people were better at hiding their reactions than others, but most made little effort to conceal their judgment. Ruby, however, held her head high. "Remember, you belong here just as much as anyone else," Logan said quietly. Ruby gave a small smile, though she knew it wouldn't be easy. Vanessa was there, of course, and the moment she saw Ruby, she wasted no time approaching them. "So, a new companion this time, Logan?" she said, her smile dripping with venom. Before Logan could respond, Ruby did. "At least I'm here by choice," she said without hesitation. Vanessa was momentarily speechless but quickly recovered her composure. "Enjoy it while it lasts. These things are never permanent." Logan took Ruby's arm, signaling it was time to move on. Later that evening, as Logan danced with Ruby in the center of the room, he couldn't help but notice how composed she seemed, even under pressure. "You're handling this really well," he said. "I'm trying not to let their judgment get to me." Ruby replied with a slight smile. "That's more than most people can do." Ruby met Logan's gaze, and for a moment she forgot where she was. It felt like everything around them had disappeared, leaving just the two of them. Logan felt something similar. It wasn't just admiration, it was something he couldn't quite put into words. By the end of the night, Ruby realized that, despite the stares and comments, she had overcome an important hurdle. She still had doubts, but she was starting to believe that belonging wasn't about where she came from, but what she was willing to face. The next morning, Ruby woke up with a sense that something had shifted. The previous night was still fresh in her mind, the cutting words, the judgmental looks, and, most of all, the dance with Logan. Something inside her had awakened, a newfound strength she didn't yet fully understand. As she tidied up the kitchen, Logan walked in, casually dressed with a cup of coffee in hand. He seemed more relaxed than usual, as if some of his usual tension had eased. "Ready for the next challenge?" he asked with a slight smile. Ruby raised an eyebrow. "What exactly do you mean by challenge?" "Today, we're doing something different. I want to show you that you can adapt to any situation." Ruby was skeptical. Whenever Logan used vague words, it meant he was up to something. "I need to know what's at stake before I agree," she replied. Logan chuckled softly, taking a sip of coffee before answering. "We're going shopping, but this time, you'll pick out the clothes. No interference from me." Ruby froze for a moment, processing what he'd just said. "I don't need fancy clothes, Logan. It's not about what you need. It's about what you deserve." Ruby rolled her eyes, but knew resisting him was pointless. Logan had a peculiar way of convincing her, even when she didn't want to admit it. At the store, Ruby felt uneasy. The clothes hanging on the racks were far more expensive than anything she had ever touched. She ran her fingers over a silk dress, feeling the softness of the fabric, but quickly pulled back, as if even considering it was wrong. "Come on, Ruby. Pick something you like," Logan encouraged. She looked at him suspiciously. "This is a test, isn't it? You want to see if I'll give in to luxury." Logan crossed his arms, smiling. "Maybe. Or maybe I just want you to realize you don't need to be afraid of these things." Ruby sighed and picked out a simple but elegant outfit. Logan seemed pleased, but she still felt out of place. At the checkout counter, she saw the total on the screen and almost stepped back. "That's a lot of money, Logan." "Let me worry about it. Now let's get something to eat." They left the store and headed to a nearby restaurant. While they waited for their order, Ruby stared out the window, watching people pass by. It was strange how the world seemed so different now, even though she was still the same. "You've changed?" Logan remarked, breaking the silence. Ruby turned to him, confused. "What do you mean? When we first met, you hesitated to accept any kind of help. Now you're starting to trust yourself more. That's a change." Ruby looked away, fiddling with her napkin. "I don't know if I trust myself more. I think I'm just trying to survive, like always." Logan shook his head. "Surviving isn't enough, Ruby. You need to live." His words lingered in her mind as they ate in silence. There was something about Logan's sincerity that made her question her own beliefs. Back at the apartment, Logan received an urgent call. He seemed worried as he spoke on the phone, pacing back and forth. "What's wrong?" Ruby asked when he finally hung up. "An important meeting was moved up. I need to leave now. Can I help with anything?" she offered, surprising herself. Logan looked at her for a moment as if considering the offer. "Actually, yes. Could you organize some documents in my office while I'm gone? I'll need them when I get back." Ruby nodded and headed to the office. While organizing the papers, something caught her eye. A black folder with Logan's name engraved in gold. It was different from the others, more worn, as if it had been used many times. She hesitated, but curiosity got the better of her. Opening the folder, she found old photos and newspaper clippings. One photo showed Logan with a young man who looked like his brother. Ruby vaguely remembered Logan mentioning a brother in one of their conversations, but he had never gone into detail. There was something about Logan's expression in the photo, lighter, more carefree. Before she could look further, she heard the apartment door open. Logan had returned earlier than expected. "Ruby?" he called, walking toward the office. She quickly closed the folder, feeling guilty. "I was organizing the documents like you asked," she said, trying to sound casual. Logan noticed the black folder on the desk and frowned. "Did you open that?" Ruby hesitated for a moment before answering. "Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to invade your privacy." Logan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's not a problem. It's just something I don't share with many people." "It's your brother, isn't it?" she asked, pointing to the photo. Logan nodded, looking at the image with a mix of sadness and nostalgia. "His name was Liam. He died in a car accident a few years ago. I was driving." Ruby remained silent, feeling the weight of his words. "I'm so sorry, Logan." He took a deep breath, as if trying to keep his composure. "Since that day, I threw myself into work. I thought if I stayed busy enough, the guilt would go away. But it never does." Ruby looked at him, seeing a side of Logan he had never shown before. For the first time, she understood why he was so hard on himself. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said softly. Logan raised his eyes to her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "Thank you, Ruby." Their conversation was interrupted by Logan's phone ringing again. He quickly answered and left the office, leaving Ruby alone once more. But something had shifted between them. For the first time, she felt there was a real connection, something deeper than gratitude or obligation. As she finished organizing the papers, Ruby thought about how this man, who seemed to have everything, carried so much hidden pain. And in some way, it made her feel that maybe, just maybe, she could help him as much as he was helping her. Ruby had started to realize that her presence in Logan's life was having an unexpected effect. The conversation about Liam still echoed in her mind. The weight of guilt Logan carried seemed to have shaped who he was, explaining much of his actions. Even so, she couldn't shake the feeling that something between them was shifting. As she tidied up the living room late that morning, the doorbell rang again. Ruby went to answer it, thinking it might be another delivery or, worse, another unpleasant visit from Vanessa. But this time it was a well-dressed man with a cold smile and an assessing gaze. "Good morning, I'm Matthew, Logan's business partner," he introduced himself, extending a hand. Ruby hesitated but shook it. "He's not home right now." Matthew glanced around the apartment before focusing back on Ruby. "And you must be the famous Ruby, right?" She frowned, uneasy with the way he said her name. "That's right. How can I help you?" Matthew gave a condescending smile. "Actually, I'm not here for help. I just wanted to see for myself what Logan's been up to lately. He's been distracted, and now I understand why." Ruby felt the weight of the insinuation in his words. "I think you're mistaken. I just work here, nothing more." Matthew chuckled softly, adjusting his jacket. "Of course. But let me give you some advice, Ruby. Don't get too attached. Logan isn't the type to hold on to things like this. He's a practical man, and people like you don't last long in his world." Before Ruby could respond, Logan arrived. He stopped at the door, narrowing his eyes as he took in the scene. "Matthew, what are you doing here?" Matthew turned with the same cold smile. "Just a friendly visit. Wanted to see how you're doing, and of course, meet your new employee." Logan crossed his arms, clearly irritated. "If you're here to judge me, save your breath. My personal life is none of your business." Matthew shrugged. "I'm just concerned, Logan. I wouldn't want anything distracting you from the business. After all, that's what we live for, isn't it?" Without waiting for a reply, Matthew turned and left. When the door closed, Ruby crossed her arms, staring at Logan. "Seems like your friends share the same opinion about me as your ex." Logan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Ignore what he said. Matthew's a man who only cares about numbers. He doesn't understand that some things go beyond that." "And do you?" Ruby asked, her voice carrying a curiosity she couldn't suppress. Logan hesitated before replying. I'm trying. Ruby didn't know what to say. She wanted to believe Logan was different from the people around him, but doubts lingered in her mind. Maybe Matthew and Vanessa were right. Maybe she was just a temporary distraction in Logan's life. Later that day, Logan decided to step out to clear his head and invited Ruby to join him. He took her to a quiet park, far from the city's frantic pace. As they walked, Ruby began to relax, taking in the gentle breeze and the scent of flowers around them. "Do you come here often?" she asked, noticing how at ease Logan seemed in the setting. "Whenever I need to think," he replied. "This is one of the few places I can unplug for a while." Ruby smiled faintly, surprised to see this more vulnerable side of Logan. "Seems like you've had a lot on your mind lately." Logan stopped and looked at her. "I have, and a lot of it involves you." Ruby froze, processing what he had just said. "What do you mean by that?" she asked cautiously. Logan looked away, as if trying to organize his thoughts before answering. "You've changed something in me, Ruby. I can't explain it, but since you came into my life, I've started seeing things differently." Ruby felt her heart race but worked to keep her composure. "That sounds like a good thing, or is it not?" Logan chuckled softly. "I think it's good, but it's also confusing. I'm not used to feeling this way." Ruby wanted to ask more, but the sound of a phone interrupted them. Logan answered, and his expression turned serious. "All right, I'll be there right away." He hung up and looked at Ruby. "Something urgent came up. I have to handle it." "That's fine. I can head back to the apartment on my own." "No, I'll take you." Logan led her back, but Ruby couldn't shake the feeling that their earlier conversation had been left unresolved. She wanted to understand what he truly felt, but knew it wasn't the right time to push him. Back at the apartment, Ruby tried to keep herself busy with simple tasks, but while organizing the office, she came across a photo of Logan and Matthew at a formal event. She studied the picture, trying to grasp the kind of pressure Logan faced in his world. Being surrounded by people who only cared about money and power must have been exhausting. Ruby began to wonder if she really had a place in his life. She was starting to grow attached, and that scared her. Logan might be genuine, but the world around him was ruthless. She knew that in the end, she could just become another disposable piece in a game far bigger than she could comprehend. When Logan returned that evening, he looked more tired than ever. He dropped his briefcase on the table and sank into the couch, rubbing his eyes. "Are you okay?" Ruby asked, breaking the silence. Logan let out a deep sigh. "Sometimes I wonder why I keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Trying to keep everything balanced. Work, expectations, my personal life. It feels like I'm always chasing something, but never actually getting anywhere." Ruby sat in the armchair nearby, watching him closely. "Maybe you're running in the wrong direction." Logan looked up at her, surprised by the simplicity of her answer. "And what's the right direction?" Ruby shrugged. "That's something you'll have to figure out. But from what I can see, you're more than the world around you. You just need to believe that." Logan fell silent, absorbing her words. He didn't know why, but Ruby had a way of seeing through the layers he had spent years building. They sat there quietly, but for the first time, Logan felt he didn't need to say anything. Ruby was beginning to understand his complexity, and he was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, she was the one person who truly got him. Ruby spent the next few days trying to sort out her thoughts. Something about her dynamic with Logan was changing, but she didn't know how to handle it. He was someone carrying the weight of a world completely different from hers. Yet he seemed to be searching for something only she could offer: honesty. As she cleaned the kitchen one morning, the apartment's landline rang. Logan had already left for work, so Ruby hesitated before answering. "Hello? Is this Ruby?" asked a woman's voice on the other end. It was Vanessa. Ruby stayed silent for a moment before replying. "Yes. What do you want?" Vanessa let out a short laugh. "I want to give you a little warning. Logan is a practical man, and you're just a distraction. He might seem different now, but as soon as something more interesting comes along, you'll be out." Ruby clenched her fists. "Maybe he's more than you think you know, Vanessa." The woman laughed again, this time with a hint of disdain. "Be careful not to get hurt. You're playing a game you don't understand." Before Ruby could respond, the call ended. She hung up the phone, trying to steady her breathing. She didn't want to let it bother her, but Vanessa's words struck a chord in an insecurity Ruby couldn't ignore. When Logan came home later that day, Ruby was still deep in thought. He noticed her expression and frowned. "Did something happen?" he asked, placing his briefcase on the table. Ruby hesitated before answering. "Vanessa called today." Logan let out an exasperated sigh, rubbing his temples. "What did she say now?" "That I'm just a distraction, that you'll get tired of me." Ruby looked at him, searching for some truth in his eyes. "Is it true?" Logan stayed quiet for a moment, clearly caught off guard by the question. "No, Ruby, it's not true." "Then why does she keep coming after me?" Ruby crossed her arms. "And why does it feel like everyone in your world is trying to push me out?" Logan stepped closer, his hands in his pockets. He looked at her directly, as if trying to convey all the sincerity he had. "Because they're used to a different version of me, a Logan who did what everyone expected. But you've shown me I can be more than that. They don't understand it, and that's why they're reacting this way." Ruby looked away, processing his words. She wanted to believe him, but it was hard to ignore the doubts Vanessa and others had planted. "Ruby, listen. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know you matter to me right now. And that's what's important." She nodded, but the words still lingered in her mind. Even if Logan was being honest, the world around him was relentless. She knew she had to be ready for anything. The next day, Logan decided to take Ruby to see one of the charitable projects he'd recently started supporting. It was an initiative to provide shelter for people experiencing homelessness, something he'd begun investing in after Ruby entered his life. When they arrived, Ruby was struck by the simplicity of the space. It wasn't luxurious, but it was functional and welcoming. A few people were gathered, receiving meals or chatting with volunteers. "You did this?" Ruby asked, looking around. "Not by myself," Logan replied humbly. "But I want to do more. After I met you, I realized how much I'd been ignoring this side of reality." Ruby gave a faint smile, though there was something deeper in her eyes. "This is important. It's good to see you using what you have to make a difference." As they walked through the shelter, Ruby began chatting with some of the people there. Logan watched from a distance, noticing how easily she connected with others. Her empathy was genuine, something he deeply admired. When they left, Ruby was visibly moved. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said. "It reminded me there are still good people in the world." Logan smiled. "You're one of them." Ruby felt her cheeks warm, but looked away, trying to hide her reaction. Later that day, Logan received an urgent call from work. He had to leave again, leaving Ruby alone in the apartment. As he prepared to head out, Ruby stopped him at the door. "Logan, do you think people can really change?" she asked, arms crossed. Logan paused, surprised by the question. "I think they can, but it's not easy. Because sometimes it feels like no matter how much I try, I'll always be the girl who came from the streets." Logan stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Ruby, what defines you isn't where you came from. It's what you do with it. You've already changed far more than you realize." Ruby stayed quiet, but his words comforted her in a way she hadn't expected. After Logan left, Ruby began tidying the apartment, trying to distract herself. But Vanessa and Matthew's words still lingered like a shadow. As much as she wanted to believe in Logan, part of her feared getting too attached and ending up hurt. While cleaning the office, she came across a contact list on the desk. Among the names, Matthew's was highlighted. Ruby stared at it for a few seconds, remembering his visit. He seemed like the kind of person who would do whatever it took to protect his own interests, even if it meant hurting Logan. Ruby began to wonder if Matthew and Vanessa were working together to undermine Logan. Something about the way they spoke felt more calculated than simple concern. She put the list aside and returned to the living room, but the unease lingered. Something was brewing, and Ruby knew she needed to be ready for whatever it was. "Let's do something fun for those who only read the comments. Type hot dog in the comments, and only those who make it this far will understand." Now, back to the story. The days that followed were intense for Ruby. Her relationship with Logan had grown closer, but the doubts and insecurities planted by Vanessa and Matthew still haunted her. Logan, meanwhile, seemed more focused than ever, trying to balance his personal life and work while giving Ruby his attention. One afternoon, as Ruby was organizing the living room, Logan walked in with a serious expression. He held an envelope, his face hinting that its contents were important. "Ruby, we need to talk," he said, placing the envelope on the table. Ruby stopped what she was doing, feeling a lump form in her throat. "What is it?" Logan sighed and pulled out a chair, sitting down. "It's something I've been putting off, but I think you deserve to know. It's about Vanessa and Matthew." Ruby sat across from him, unsure of what to expect. "They've been pressuring me to take a path I don't want to. They want me to sell a significant part of my company to expand, but it goes against everything I believe in. And honestly, I think the fact that you're here bothers them even more." "Why?" Ruby asked, confused. "Because you make me question things I've never questioned before. And that scares them because it means I might start making decisions that aren't just about money or power." Ruby stayed silent, trying to process his words. There was something deeply sincere about the way Logan spoke, but her insecurities still weighed on her. "Logan, I don't want to be a problem for you." "You're not a problem," he interrupted firmly. "In fact, you're the only thing keeping me grounded in all of this." Ruby looked away, trying to control the wave of emotions that overwhelmed her. "I just don't know if I'm strong enough to face all of this," she admitted. Logan reached out, holding her hand gently. "You're stronger than you think, Ruby, and I'm here to help you just like you've been helping me." Later that evening, Logan decided they needed a change of scenery. He took Ruby to a quiet restaurant, far from the chaos of the city. Over dinner, Logan seemed more at ease, and Ruby began to feel more comfortable herself. "You know, Ruby," Logan said, "I never thought someone like you could come into my life and change so much in such a short time." Ruby chuckled softly, fiddling with her glass of water. "Is that a good thing, or not?" Logan smiled warmly. "It's definitely a good thing." As they continued talking, Ruby noticed that Logan was becoming more open. He wasn't the same distant, work-obsessed man she'd met weeks ago. There was a newfound humanity in him that made her feel connected in a way she hadn't experienced before. On their walk back to the apartment, Logan stopped suddenly. Ruby looked at him, puzzled. "What is it?" she asked. Logan took a deep breath, as if summoning his courage. "Ruby, I need to say something, and I hope you won't run away." "I'm here, aren't I?" she replied, trying to lighten the mood. Logan smiled faintly, but his eyes were serious. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Ruby froze, stunned by his confession. She'd felt something growing between them, but hearing Logan admit it caught her off guard. "Logan, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now," Logan assured her. "I just needed you to know, you've changed how I see the world, and I can't ignore that anymore." Ruby's heart raced. Part of her wanted to believe every word, but another part was still afraid that this was only temporary. "Logan, I need time," she said finally. "This is a lot for me to process." Logan nodded, understanding. "I get it. I don't expect anything from you, Ruby. I just want you to be happy, whatever path you choose." They continued their walk in silence, but it wasn't an uncomfortable one. Ruby felt something shift inside her as well, though she still needed time to understand it fully. The next morning, Ruby woke up with a newfound determination. She realized she needed to confront her insecurities and figure out what she wanted for her life. As she sipped coffee in the kitchen, Logan walked in, looking tired but resolute. "Matthew called for a meeting today," he said. "It's going to be tough, but I'm ready to face him." "You'll be fine," Ruby replied with a small smile. "You're stronger than you think." Logan returned her smile, clearly grateful for her encouragement. "Thank you, Ruby. That means a lot coming from you." When Logan left for the meeting, Ruby took the time alone to reflect. No matter what happened between them, she knew she needed to become more confident and independent. It was the only way she could be sure she'd have the strength to move forward if things didn't work out. Hours later, Logan returned, exhausted but relieved. "I did it," he said, sinking into the couch. "Matthew finally understood that I'm not backing down." Ruby smiled, feeling an unexpected pride. "I knew you could do it." "It's because of you, Ruby," Logan said sincerely. "You've made me realize I can be more than what they expect of me." His words struck a chord, but Ruby still felt the weight of her own doubts. She wanted to believe him, but the seeds of uncertainty planted by Vanessa and Matthew lingered. As they talked, Logan's phone rang again. He answered quickly, and Ruby could tell from his tone that it was important. "Yes, schedule the meeting for tomorrow. I want to go over the next steps," he said before hanging up. Turning to Ruby, he added, "It seems like things are finally falling into place." Ruby nodded, but there was something in her expression that Logan couldn't quite read. She knew she had to make a decision soon, but she wasn't ready to take that step yet. Later that night, Ruby sat on the couch, staring at the city lights twinkling through the window. The apartment was quiet, almost oppressively so. Over the past few days, she'd come to realize how much her life had changed since meeting Logan. It wasn't just about having a roof over her head or new clothes. It was the feeling that, for the first time, someone truly believed in her. Yet doubt still lingered in her mind. Logan had confessed his feelings, but Ruby wasn't sure if she was ready to accept them. Not because she didn't feel anything, but because she was afraid. Afraid that, in the end, everything Vanessa and Matthew had said might be true, that this was just temporary. The next morning, Ruby woke up determined to sort through her thoughts. As she tidied up the kitchen, Logan walked into the room, dressed more casually than usual. "Not going to work today?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "No, I decided I needed a day off." He gave a small smile. "I thought I'd take you somewhere special." Ruby raised her eyebrows. "What kind of place?" "You'll see. Put on something comfortable." She hesitated for a moment, but eventually gave in. Minutes later, they were in Logan's car, driving along a winding road out of the city. The silence between them was comfortable, though Ruby was still lost in her own thoughts. "So, are you going to tell me where we're going?" she asked after a while. Logan shrugged, keeping his eyes on the road. "It's a surprise." Ruby rolled her eyes but couldn't help a small smile. About an hour later, they arrived at an open field where a small lake sparkled under the sunlight. Trees surrounded the area, creating a peaceful and secluded atmosphere. Logan parked the car and stepped out, grabbing a basket from the trunk. "Is this a picnic?" Ruby asked, surprised. "I thought we could use some time away from everything," he replied, holding out his hand to help her out of the car. They sat by the lake, and Logan started unpacking the basket. Fruits, sandwiches, and even a bottle of wine. Ruby looked at him with a mix of disbelief and amusement. "You actually put this together?" "Of course I did. Don't think I'm capable?" He grinned playfully. Ruby let out a soft laugh and picked up a sandwich. As they ate, she began to relax. The calm surroundings seemed to push her worries aside, and Logan was more laid back than she'd ever seen him. "You know, this is different from anything I've ever experienced," she said, gazing at the lake. "How so?" Logan asked. "No one's ever done something like this for me. I've always been so focused on surviving that I never thought I could just enjoy a moment like this." Logan was silent for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "You deserve this, Ruby, and so much more." She looked away, trying to manage the wave of emotions rising within her. Logan had a way of saying simple things that struck deeply. "Why do you do this?" she finally asked. "Because I care about you." Logan looked at her directly, his eyes holding a sincerity Ruby couldn't ignore. "I know it's hard to believe, but it's the truth." Ruby stayed quiet, trying to process it all. Before she could respond, Logan continued. "I know you're scared, Ruby, but I also know you're stronger than anyone I've ever met, and I want to be by your side, no matter what path you choose." His words were exactly what Ruby needed to hear, but they didn't make her decision any easier. She knew her feelings for Logan were real, but she also knew she didn't want to rely on anyone to find her own way. When they returned to the apartment, Ruby went straight to the bedroom. She needed a moment alone to gather her thoughts. Logan respected her space, but couldn't help feeling a little anxious. He'd made his feelings clear, but the rest was up to her. While Ruby was in the bedroom, Logan received a call from Matthew. He answered reluctantly, already guessing what the conversation would be about. "Logan, we need to talk. It's about the decision you made in the last meeting." "I've already said I'm not changing my mind, Matthew. This isn't just about you. There's a lot at stake here. And that's exactly why I can't give in. I have to do what I believe is right, not what's most convenient." Matthew was silent for a few seconds before responding. "You're changing, Logan. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I hope you know what you're doing." After the call ended, Logan stood by the window, deep in thought. He knew he was going against what was expected of him, but for the first time he felt like he was on the right track. Later, Ruby came out of the bedroom and found Logan in the living room, staring out the window. She hesitated for a moment before walking over to him. "Logan." He turned, surprised to see that she looked calmer than before. "Yes?" Ruby took a deep breath as if gathering her courage. I want to try something with you, but I need to do it my way. I need to keep being myself, no matter what." Logan smiled, relieved. "That's all I want, Ruby. I don't want you to change who you are. I just want to be by your side." Ruby felt a wave of relief wash over her. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, she felt like she didn't have to face it alone. The two of them sat in silence for a moment, but this time it was a comfortable silence, full of mutual understanding. In the days that followed, Logan continued to struggle with balancing his personal and professional life, while Ruby started exploring new possibilities for her future. She knew she still had much to learn and overcome, but she finally felt she was on the right path. Logan supported her every step of the way, encouraging her to pursue her dreams, while she helped him see beyond the corporate world he was so immersed in. One evening, as the apartment was quiet, Logan surprised her with an invitation. "Put on something special. I have a surprise for you." Ruby raised an eyebrow, curious. "A surprise?" "Logan, you know I'm not a fan of mysteries. Trust me this time. You'll like it." Though hesitant, Ruby did as he asked. She picked out a simple but elegant dress Logan had bought for her during one of his many attempts to help her feel comfortable in this new world. When she stepped out of the bedroom, Logan, already dressed in an impeccable suit, looked at her as if time had stopped. "You look stunning, Ruby." She blushed but tried to hide her nervousness. "You look pretty good yourself." "So where are we going?" "You'll see," he replied with an enigmatic smile. Logan took her to a restaurant perched high above the city. The view was spectacular, with bright lights illuminating the skyline. Ruby was speechless when she saw the table reserved for them, adorned with flowers and candles. It was the kind of scene she had only imagined in movies. "Logan, what are you up to?" she asked suspiciously. "Just enjoy the moment," he said, pulling out her chair for her. The dinner was perfect. They laughed, talked about the little details of their lives, and for a moment, Ruby felt as though there were no barriers left between them. When the waiter brought dessert, Ruby noticed something different. A small envelope was resting next to her plate. "What's this?" she asked, looking at Logan. "Open it and see." Ruby picked up the envelope and carefully opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Logan's words were heartfelt and full of emotion. He described how she had changed his life, how her strength inspired him, and how he couldn't imagine a future without her. When Ruby finished reading, she looked up to find Logan kneeling beside the table, holding a small velvet box. "Ruby, you've taught me that true love isn't about where we come from, but who we choose to be with. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side, learning from you, growing with you, and loving you every day. Will you marry me?" Ruby's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she couldn't speak, only nodded enthusiastically. Logan smiled in relief and slipped the ring onto her finger, a symbol of everything they had overcome together. News of their engagement spread quickly among Logan's few friends and acquaintances. Despite some skeptical reactions, he and Ruby were determined to do things their way. They planned a simple ceremony, full of meaning. On the morning of the wedding, Ruby was in a delicately decorated room, getting ready for the big moment. She wore a classic white dress with subtle details that highlighted her natural beauty. Chloe, a volunteer from the shelter Ruby had worked at in recent months, was by her side, helping with the final touches. "You look beautiful, Ruby." Logan won't believe his eyes. "Thank you, Chloe." Ruby smiled nervously. "I still can't believe this is all happening." Meanwhile, Logan waited at the altar, surrounded by white flowers and soft lighting. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, but his gaze was fixed on the entrance, eager to see Ruby. When the music began, everyone stood. Ruby walked in slowly, her heart racing. Her eyes met Logan's, and in that moment, the world seemed to disappear. It was as if they were the only two people there. When she reached the altar, Logan gently took her hands, the smile on his face reflecting everything he felt. "You look incredible," he whispered. Ruby tried to hold back her tears, but the emotion was too overwhelming. The officiant began the ceremony, and the words they exchanged were filled with love and sincere promises. "Logan, you showed me I was capable of so much more than I ever imagined. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I promise to love and support you in all our journeys. Ruby, you brought color to a life that once felt empty. You showed me what it means to truly live. I promise to love and respect you every day for the rest of my life." When the officiant declared them husband and wife, Logan pulled Ruby into a gentle but passionate kiss. The applause echoed through the room, but for them it all still felt like a dream. The reception was intimate and joyful. Logan made sure to include people who were important to Ruby, like the friends she had made at the shelter, and even some staff from the restaurant where she had worked briefly. The celebration was a blend of their worlds, proof that they could come together without losing who they were. Later, as they danced under the twinkling lights, Logan whispered in Ruby's ear, "This is just the beginning. I have so many plans for us." Ruby rested her head on his shoulder, feeling completely at peace. "I don't need big plans, Logan. I just need you." They danced for a few more moments, enjoying each other's presence. Life wouldn't always be easy, but they both knew that together, they could face anything. What did you think of Logan and Ruby's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And don't forget to check out more emotional tales by clicking here on the end screen.